Hello, good evening, everyone. Welcome to our financial aid night. Welcome to our first in-person meeting for quite some time now. I certainly appreciate this forum much more than virtual. How do you feel about that? And it's maybe a little less convenient. I guess it would be good if I introduce myself. My name is Leah Lavinia Freitas. I am the new Director of Guidance here at New Rochelle. Very happy to be here. Very happy to be here in person again. Doing these presentations virtually, for me, I just never felt that I could really connect with our families. So this is wonderful. Tonight's presentation is very important, and I'm so pleased to see that so many 11th grade families are here. How many 11th grade families in the house? All right, in 12th grade? All right, so a little bit more 12th grade, but still. Our goal always is to give this information to families as early as possible. I would invite the entire school if I could, but I would be afraid that we wouldn't be able to fit them. Before I forget, I would love to introduce, you probably know her, Ms. Herzog, our college and career counselor, who just likes to come to these events every year. But we're happy to have her, and she's wonderful, and we're very blessed to have her as part of our guidance team. Tomorrow, how many of you are coming tomorrow to our 12th grade family night? Yes, unusual scheduling, I get it. My first day was September 1st, so the scheduling got a little wonky, and then we had some conflicts, and so next year it won't be like this. It will probably be, or it will be, the 12th grade family night first, much earlier in the school year. And then the financial aid night. But this year, if you would just be forgiving of the scheduling and my newness to the school district. So without further ado, I am blessed to have Mr. Raymond Garo from Iona University. My father came to the United States from Puerto Rico when he was a young child. He was the first in his family to graduate from college, and he graduated from Iona College. So I have a very soft spot in my heart for Iona University now. I heard about this school growing up all throughout my years, so this is an honor. Thank you very much, and it's all yours.
Well, good evening, everyone. My name is Ray Garo. I'm our Associate Director for Admissions over at Iona University. Truth be told, I'm still getting used to saying university. It's so new. I'm actually a graduate of Iona. I studied business management as an undergraduate student and studied marketing and international business for my master's, and kind of never left. I've been in the New Rochelle area for 11 years now, working in admissions for about 7 years now. It's my home away from home. They haven't kicked me out, so things must be working out. But I'm super excited to be here. This is actually funny enough, or ironically, it's my first time in New Rochelle High School. I actually called one of my coworkers earlier who attended New Rochelle High School, and I was like, where's the main entrance? I gotta figure this out. So I'm super excited to be here. So with that being said, what I wanna share with you a bit tonight is some tips and tricks when it comes to the financial aid process. We know that for our seniors in the room, the college process can be very stressful, right? There's so much going on. You're trying to get through senior year. You're filling out applications for the different colleges you're applying to. And now you have to worry about filling out a FAFSA form, a CSS profile, and all of these other financial aid forms. For the parents in the room, I'm sure it's just as stressful. So my hope and my goal tonight is to try to make that process a little easier, share some tips and tricks that are gonna help alleviate that stress, because it doesn't have to be stressful. We can potentially find it enjoyable. So a few of the items that I definitely want to cover, I first want to start speaking about the different kinds of scholarships that many colleges and universities offer. I also want to speak about the different kinds of financial aid opportunities that are available. We'll speak a little bit about the FAFSA. We'll discuss what the FSAID is and how that's important and how that relates to the FAFSA. We're also going to discuss private scholarships, affordability, conversations that you should be having with one another to keep that line of communication open. And we'll go over all of the different terms that are associated with FAFSA, like the federal Pell Grant, student loans, work study, things of that nature. So let's speak a little bit about institutional scholarships. First and foremost, for the students who are currently applying to colleges, you'll notice that many colleges and universities will offer you merit scholarships based on your academic achievement. So really what this means is that they're gonna look at how well you've done academically, how much hard work you've put into your studies academically in high school to determine how much they can offer you in merit scholarships. Now, this is super important for the juniors in the room, because you still have all of your junior year to get your grades up as much as possible. Because again, the higher the grades, the higher the scholarships, right? The higher the scholarships, the less money you may need from FAFSA, right? The less money you may need from FAFSA, in other words, maybe the less amount of loans that you may have to take out. That means that there's going to be more money in your pockets when you start working because there's less to pay back, right? And it's going to be easier on your parents. I'm sure that that's something that they would love if they have to pay less for college, right? So the hard work that you're putting in now, I promise you that it's going to pay off, especially when you start to receive the different scholarships from many of these colleges and universities. Many colleges and universities also offer what's called micro scholarships or even stackable awards. These are awards based on individual achievement. So really my biggest tip here is when completing the college application, you want to add as much information as possible because the colleges are going to utilize that to determine what additional scholarship opportunities may be available for you. So for example, let's say you're interested in performing arts. Maybe you play an instrument, maybe you do theater, maybe you're a singer. Some colleges may offer performing arts scholarships just for that, right? Or maybe you did hundreds of hours of community service in your 3 to 4 years here at New Rochelle High School. There are many colleges out there that offer community service scholarships. But again, the only way that they're going to know to award you these opportunities is if you put this in your application. So when completing those college applications, you want to be as detailed as possible. That way they can look at that in order to see what they can offer you. Now, in addition to the micro scholarships, there are also private scholarships. And there are many companies out there who want to give you money to go to college. All you got to do is submit an application. If anyone is wondering, we have 194 days between now and May 1st, which is the National Deposit Deadline Day. And the reason I mention that is because you can utilize those 194 days to apply for a private scholarship. One scholarship a day, even one scholarship every other day. And you're going to see a lot of scholarships that offer lower amounts. Maybe it's a $500 scholarship. Maybe it's a $700 scholarship. But you know what? If you apply to at least 100 of those and you get just 10% of those scholarships, that adds up very quickly. The most reputable websites that I typically mention are fastweb.com, fitaid.org. But most recently, a lot of students have been using goingmerry.com as well. That is a very popular site. So it's going, Merry, like Merry Christmas, .com. So I use, sure. So the question is, what is the deadline? So I use May 1st kind of as a deadline because many colleges use that as the national deposit deadline, meaning that's typically the deadline that students have to make their college choice. So you want to have those applications in well before that deadline in time to receive the financial aid packages from the different colleges and universities. And then one other tip that I forgot to mention, not being afraid to ask for more. So, you know, quick backstory about me, I'm actually a first generation college student. My parents didn't get to go to school, and going through this whole process for me, I remember it being very stressful. And if there's one thing that I regret that I learned now working in admissions is asking for more. I never had the courage to ask for more opportunities, for more scholarship opportunities or financial aid opportunities. So if there's one piece of advice that I would give is no matter who the college representative is or the financial aid representative for that college or university that your child is looking to apply for, say, hey, what other opportunities are available? Is there an appeal process? Can I appeal my financial aid package to see if there's additional awards? The worst they can say is no, but you would never know unless you ask. So what is financial aid? Financial aid consists of funds that are provided to students and families to help pay for their post-secondary educational expenses, or in other words, the college or university that they're looking to go to. And there are many different forms of financial aid that are available. And before we go into it, and before we go into the FAFSA, the first thing I want to chat about is the FSAID. And the FSAID is essentially, it's a unique ID that's tied to the individual person that's completing the FAFSA. It's kind of like your legal electronic signature. So in order to fill out the FAFSA, the student and the parent or the guardian that's filling out the FAFSA is going to have to create their own FSAID. And in order to create an FSAID, they're going to ask for a variety of different information that is very specific to you. So for example, your name, your date of birth, your social security number are really the three biggest or the two biggest ones in order to make you your own unique person for that FSAID. Now, when you create this FSAID, my biggest piece of advice would be to save that information somewhere safe, because you're going to need to use this FSAID multiple times, pretty much every single year. And that thorn was getting really tired. So you're going to have to use it multiple times. You're going to use it every single year. And if you have another child who's going to college afterwards, that FSAID is still going to follow you afterwards as well. So I would recommend I would recommend saving it somewhere safe, so that way you don't have to worry about looking for it year after year. So completing the FAFSA form. So the FAFSA is essentially a free application for additional federal student aid. That application does go live on October 1st every single year. In other words, it's already live. And in order to complete the FAFSA, you're going to need a number of different documents that are required. So for example, it's going to be a variety of different personal information that they're going to ask of you and your child. They're going to ask for your W-2s and other financial documents, and additional information to determine eligibility for financial aid. My biggest piece of advice is, prior to beginning this FAFSA or completing the FAFSA form, I would collect all of those documents and I would have it in one place, as opposed to trying to complete the FAFSA and running back and forth from the house looking for these financial aid or these financial documents that you would have to provide. I remember completing the FAFSA from the first time with my mom, and we spent the whole night trying to do it, and I'd be like, Mom, I need this, and then she would run back to the room, and they're like, oh wait, I need this as well. And it just became a bit of a stressful situation for us. So my biggest piece of advice would be, just have all of those documents together ahead of time. That way you're not running back and forth looking for a lot of these documents. And I would also recommend, if you're going to complete the FAFSA in one evening or 2 evenings, set the time for it. If you're going to work on the FAFSA, I would make sure that you're in that headspace where you're going to sit down and you're just going to look at the FAFSA and you're going to work on it. It's not something that you can do, in a couple of minutes. It is going to take a bit of time. So I would just take your time with it. I would be as relaxed as possible, because it will take a bit of time. Now, for the FAFSA, when completing FAFSA, your child is going to be able to add a variety of different colleges and universities to it. So you can add up to 10 colleges to the FAFSA form. Every college has its own unique identifying code, which is on the FAFSA website. I always get the question I typically get is, well, hey, I applied to more than 10 schools. What do I do now if I can only add 10 colleges and universities? Once you add a particular school to the FAFSA form or to the FAFSA form, you can remove it right after, because once it's been added, it's gonna send that information directly to that school. So you can always add schools and remove schools as need be. And then, sure. Correct. So once you submit the FAFSA, you can't take back the information that you already submitted. Well, yes, you can add schools. So the first thing you would do is you complete the FAFSA form. You would fill in all of the information, demographic information, personal information, financials, all of that fun stuff. And then once you complete all of that, the last step would be to add the schools afterwards. Or you can. You can add schools up until the deposit deadline day. Absolutely. I see another hand. Same question. Awesome. So there was one more thing. Oh, the other comment I typically get from some families is, well, hey, I know I'm not going to qualify for any additional financial aid, so I'm not going to complete the FAFSA. And my response is, hey, it's a free application. The information that's provided is strictly going to be used to see if your child is eligible for additional financial aid. You quite literally have nothing to lose. The government is not going to come and knock on your door for the information that they saw on the FAFSA website. Again, it's strictly to see if your child is eligible for financial aid. So if you're a little hesitant or a little doubtful, the biggest thing I would say is, hey, it's free, and I would recommend it because you would never know unless you submit that FAFSA form. That's a great question. So the question is essentially, if you complete the FAFSA, will it come back to haunt you in future years for future opportunities for financial aid? The answer is no. They're not gonna come back and knock on your door and say, hey, put this 2 years ago when things changed. That's why the FAFSA was always updated every single year as well to reflect the most recent financial information that you have available. No, they're not tracking patterns. They're just strictly looking to see if your child is eligible for financial aid. Sure. So the question is, what if the child is living in a family where the parents are divorced, so they both have to submit? Is the FAFSA included for both? From my understanding, it's typically whoever's claiming the child as a dependent. But I would always recommend checking with the financial aid offices just in case. So yeah, the other thing I wanted to mention with the FAFSA as well is, sure.
How does it work with twins?
How does it work with twins?
Yeah, you said that the
yes, absolutely. Hey, I promise you wouldn't be the first family having twins going to school. So if you have twins or you have multiple kids going to the colleges or universities at the same time, they would both submit their own FAFSA. They would each have their own FSA ID, their own unique ID, and the parent that's submitting the FAFSA would also complete their section of the FAFSA for both their childs. And there's a lot that gets taken into consideration, and one of the items that gets taken into consideration for FAFSA is typically household information. So they do take a look at how many children are living in a household and how many of those children are going to college to determine how much they can offer, to determine what the estimated family contribution is. Great question. Fun fact: when I had just first started working at Iona, we had quadruplets who were attending Iona, and the 4 of them applied for financial aid. It worked out for them. They stayed at Iona for 4 years as well. So yeah, so the other item that I wanted to mention that's not on this slide is the CSS profile. That's another term that you'll hear some colleges and universities throw at you. The CSS profile is another application for financial aid. So the FAFSA is a free application for federal aid, and there are certain colleges and universities that use the CSS profile to determine if you would be eligible for institutional aid, which is essentially financial aid that's coming from the school itself. It's not required by every school. I believe there's a little over 200 colleges and universities that require the CSS profile. So when you're putting together your college list and filling out a FAFSA, you'll have to take a look to see any of those schools also require that CSS profile. It's essentially going to ask very similar information to what FAFSA will ask you: demographic, household information, financials, and things of that nature. So let's fast forward a little. Let's say you completed the FAFSA, you submitted all of the information, and now you're waiting for the financial aid packages from all of these colleges and universities. What are some of the things that you can potentially see on a financial aid package? First and foremost, there's the federal Pell Grant. The federal Pell Grant is financial aid that's awarded from the federal government to a child who qualifies for it. This upcoming year, the federal Pell Grant, the maximum that can be awarded is a little over $6,800. It's gone up over the past couple of years. It is free money, or in other words, it is financial aid that does not have to be paid back. I did put a little asterisk there because the only way that federal Pell Grant would have to be paid back is if your child is essentially failing or taking below the minimum amount of college credits, which is typically less than 12 credits. But assuming that your child does well in school and they're taking all of their classes, then they would not have an issue with receiving this free aid from the government. Now, in addition to that, there's also the Federal Supplemental Education Opportunity Grant, which is essentially also known as the SEOG or the FSEOG grant. And that's very similar to the federal Pell Grant in the sense that it does come from the federal government. It's free money. It typically ranges between $100 to $4,000 each year. And it's just additional financial aid that doesn't have to be paid back. That's a great question. So the question is, do you have to apply separately for the different areas of, or for the different forms of financial aid that's coming from FAFSA? You don't have to submit any separate applications for the ones that are coming from the federal government, but there is a separate application for New York State TAP, which is something that I'm going to get into as well. Something that I did forget to mention in my last slide, there's something that's used that's called prior when completing the FAFSA, meaning that the financial documents that you would submit are prior, meaning they're 2 years prior. So when completing the 2022-2023 FAFSA form, you would have to utilize your 2022 or your 2020 tax returns to complete the FAFSA. A common question that I typically get is, well, what if my financial situation has changed between 2020 and 2022? We know that 2020 was a very challenging year for many of us. So, there may be a change in your financial situation. If that is the case, you still do submit the FAFSA with your 2020 tax returns, but then you would reach out to the individual colleges and universities that your child is applying to share that information. And every college and university has a different process. They may have you fill out a special conditions form. They may have you do an appeal process where you can have an opportunity to explain what those changes are and show proof of the changes in your income or whatever the financial situation may be. Sure. 2020 or the 2022-2023 tax return or FAFSA. Absolutely.
It's always a 2-year look back.
Correct. That's something that started, sometime around like 2018, 2019 was when they started the prior. When I was filling out the FAFSA, it was just the prior year. I believe the reason why they did that is to avoid my understanding is that when they were doing just the prior year, the tax returns weren't always completed by all of the families. So by doing prior, that guarantees that your tax returns are completed. That's correct. So the question is, if your child is going into college into their sophomore year, next year when you complete the FAFSA, would it be the 2021? So it would be the 2021, and then subsequently afterwards.
Yeah, so to clarify, your income went down prior to your official school director?
Correct. So if there was a change of income, if your 2020 situation is not reflective of what your situation is today, then you would reach out to those schools and universities separately.
So, if you're 24,
Correct. It would be the 2021 tax return if they're 123, 24. So for the juniors in the room, yes, for the juniors in the room, it would be the 2021. For the seniors, it would be the 2020. See how it can be very confusing very quickly. Sure. Correct. So when I looked on the FAFSA website, it said that for the 2022-2023 FAFSA form, they were looking at the 2020. I was doubtful myself, and I went on the FAFSA website just to confirm it. So when they listed 2020.
you mentioned to reach out to the schools. At what point would you reach out to the schools?
After you've completed the FAFSA form and after they've received your FAFSA information.
At what point during the school year would you recommend starting the process?
Great question. So the question is, when do you recommend that you start the FAFSA process? So it goes live on October 1st. So my biggest recommendation would be to, complete it as soon as you have a chance after October 1st. The reason for that is because many colleges and universities will wait. Many colleges and universities will first send out the acceptance letters, and soon after they would send out the financial aid packages. So if you complete that FAFSA early on, it's going to give you and your child the opportunity to take your time to make an informed decision. In your senior year, in your child's senior year, absolutely. Sure.
My child is graduating from school for the 2024. So when I'm going out
It would be the, that's actually a good point. It would be if they're starting college in, 2022, if they're starting college in 2023, fall of 2023, then it would be the 2021. Now it's coming to me. There you go. Because I'm thinking 2022 because we're in 2022, but when your child is starting the fall of 23, it would be the 21. If they're starting fall of 24, it would be 22. Prior could be very confusing. But I promise you that the FAFSA website will tell you exactly what year tax returns you will need. Just know that it's 2 years prior. Correct. So what other forms of financial aid are available? So other forms are, you have what's called the federal subsidized loan, and then you have the federal unsubsidized loan. These are student loans that are awarded from the federal government for the student, and the loan is available based on financial need as well. There's this big fear with taking out student loans, and I'm here to share that it doesn't have to be a terrible thing. When I look at student loans, I typically look at it as an investment in your child's education, if they're taking out a reasonable amount of loans. Now, if they're taking out, an outrageous amount, whether it's $50,000, $60,000 in student loans, then I would say, hey, pump the brakes. You want to make sure that it's reasonable. If your child has to take out maybe $10,000 or $15,000 in student loans, then that might not be so terrible, right? Because if you think about it, it's no different than going to the Honda dealership down the road and taking out a loan for a Honda Civic, right, which goes for about $25,000 a year. The biggest difference being that your child is actually making an investment in themselves. Using myself as an example, I actually took out $24,000 in student loans to attend IMN. And I would personally say, in my experience, it was the best investment that I made in myself because it allowed me to get my graduate degree my undergraduate degree, and then go for my graduate afterwards. And I was actually able to pay off those student loans within 3 years of graduating. And at the end of the day, it also helped me build my credit because I had something that I was paying back, which then allowed me to make other financial decisions afterwards. The biggest difference between subsidized loans and unsubsidized loans is that subsidized loans are loans that, again, are awarded from the federal government and they don't accumulate interest while your child is a full-time student in college. And that loan won't accumulate interest till 6 months after your child has completed college or has left the college. So it doesn't accumulate interest. The unsubsidized loan is a loan that does accumulate interest while your child is in college. So that's really the biggest difference between both loans. Something that I didn't know when I was in college was that no one ever told me that I can actually begin to pay my student loans back while I was in school. And when I was at Iona, I always had a job. I always had a job on campus. I always had a summer job. And eventually I had paid internships as well. And had I known that I could have started paying back my loans, I probably would have started chipping away at my unsubsidized loans, the ones that were accumulating interest, to not let that interest build up over time. So if your child is taking out a student loan, and if they have the opportunity to chip away at it, maybe it's $50 a month or $100 a month, whatever the case may be, they are more than welcome to. They don't have to wait till after they graduate to start paying off their loans. Then there's also the Direct Plus loan, which is also known as the parent loan. This is a loan that's specifically for the parents. It's very similar to a traditional loan that you would go and take out at a bank. They would run your credit to see how much you're eligible for in loans and if you're able to take out the loans to begin with. I typically don't recommend looking at this as a first option, but if not as a last resort, because chances are, if you're taking out the parent loan, you're also probably paying out of pocket throughout the year as well. So I always leave this as a last resort. You can borrow up to the cost of attendance minus the financial aid that the child has received. And the question I typically get is, well, can I pass this loan on to my child? The answer is no, it's a parent loan. So parents do have to pay this loan back. And if need be, you can request a deferment if you need to have the loan deferred as well. So the question is, does the interest accumulate? Yes, the interest begins to accumulate the moment you take out the loan. The question is, how do the interest rates compare? For the parent loan, I'm actually not too sure what the interest rates look like for the parent loans right now. I know that the student loans last year, I believe they were at about a 6%, if I'm not mistaken, but I'm not sure about the parent loans. It's about the same. So it's about the same. Sure. Sure. So the question is essentially, what is the deadline to take out the parent loan? Or... Absolutely. Right. Make a decision. Absolutely. So the question is there a deadline to make a decision on making the college decision itself, and then the deadline to essentially request for financial aid? So the national deposit deadline for many colleges and universities has historically been May 1st. So a student has up until May 1st to say, hey, this is the school that I'm going to go to. And the way that you would commit to, or the way that your child or your child would commit to this college and university is by leaving a deposit. That's what's going to guarantee your child's seat at a college. Now, what is the deadline to fill out the FAFSA or to take out a loan, whatever the case may be? There is no real deadline, but the absolute latest that I would say, I wouldn't submit this at no later than April 15th. And the reason for that is because when you complete the FAFSA and you send it to the schools, it typically takes anywhere between 3 to 5 days for it to even process. And then it's going to take the school another 2 to 3 days to receive the information, compile it, and create a financial aid package for your child. So the absolute latest I would say is April 15th, but my biggest recommendation would be to start it sooner if you have the opportunity to start it sooner. Sure. Sure. So the question is, when do students begin to fill out the applications for the colleges that they're looking to apply to? So every college and university has different deadlines. Some popular deadlines tend to be, you have let's backtrack. You have early decision, which is a binding application deadline. That means that if your child applies early decision, they're contractually agreeing to attend that college if they're accepted. Then you have early action, which is typically, or it's not binding, meaning that your child can apply earlier and they're typically notified sooner about their admissions decision. The early action application, the non-binding one, those deadlines tend to be in November and December for the most part. Then you have what's called regular decision, which is typically the last deadline for many colleges and universities. And that deadline tends to be around February 15th, March 1st, the absolute latest. And then some colleges and universities have rolling admissions, meaning that your child will find out soon after their application has been completed and reviewed. Correct. This would all happen in their senior year. Correct. You don't have to fill them out at exactly the same moment. If you wanted to fill out the FAFSA and complete it sooner before the applications are sent in, that's totally okay. They don't have to be completed simultaneously at the same time. Sure. So the early action is it's an application deadline designed for students who know for a fact that they're ready to submit their, or I'm sorry, let me backtrack. The question is the early action application like a priority application? And to answer that, it's the early action is essentially designed for students who know for a fact that they're ready to submit their application, they're ahead, they've completed it, and they're ready to submit it because they want to be notified sooner. And they feel that they're academically ready to submit that application much sooner. Those are typically the students who apply early action. Now, if your student is waiting for their mid-year grades, or first quarter senior year grades, and they want to submit that with to the colleges and universities, then they may be waiting for the regular decision deadline because they want to get senior year grades in first before submitting the application. But my biggest recommendation would be, especially for the seniors in the room and for the juniors going into your senior year, once you've compiled your college list and once you know what colleges you're looking to apply to, make sure you type up all of those deadlines and put it on your fridge so that when you go and get ice cream, you're like, oh, I can apply to this college like in the next 3 days, right? That's the easiest way to keep track of it in my mind. Sure. Right, so there's different forms of applications for many colleges. The Common App is the most popular one among many colleges and universities, but some colleges do have their own separate applications as well.
Going back to the New York State, it says that you can connect it to the FAFSA.
Right, so my biggest recommendation is when completing your FAFSA, I would also work on the New York State tab because a lot of the information that you're going to, that is required from the FAFSA, New York State tab would require it as well.
The higher education score on the bottom.
Yes.
That's like a different link, right?
Correct, that would be a different link from the FAFSA link.
So would the user ID for that be the same as the FAFSA or no?
The FSA ID, it would be, it's a different application.
But you don't have to go into that application, you can do the New York State application straight to the FAFSA.
From my understanding, yes, it can connect them, absolutely. Absolutely. So New York State TAP, going into that, it's essentially financial aid that's awarded to students who are New York State residents and have been New York State residents for the last 12 months continuously in the state of New York. And essentially the biggest requirement is that, and also as long as a student typically has about a C average or higher, then they would be eligible for New York State TAP. It's for US citizens and non-eligible or eligible non-citizens. And typically, New York State TAP students can be awarded up to a maximum of about $5,500 per year. Again, depending on your financial situation, what comes back.
But that only applies if you're at New York school.
I'm sorry?
That only applies if you're at New York school.
That is correct. That only applies if you attend New York State schools. So if your child is looking at schools in Connecticut, New Jersey, then at that point, New York State TAP wouldn't apply. Sure. That's a great question. So the question is, how much conversation is happening between the financial aid office and the admissions office? It depends on the schools. You know, every school is different. I can tell you from experience, there is a lot of communication and conversations happening between our admissions offices and our financial aid office over at Iona. I have the director of financial aid on speed dial during that time of the year. We're like on the phone almost every day, where she may be asking about the student or I may be asking her questions. So depending on the school, every school has a different process. I can personally say in my experience, there's always been a connection between offices, especially when students are submitting appeal documents. The appeal documents to request more aid actually comes through admissions, and then we forward it over to the financial aid office. And then there's conversations happening between both offices. So in terms of some important terms to know, you're going to hear terms like sticker price, net price. For a lot of colleges and universities, they're always going to tell you what the school costs, right? And for some schools, that may be $20,000 per year, it may be 30, it may be 40. Keep in mind that that is a sticker price. For many of those colleges and universities, you're not paying the MSRP or what the school actually costs, right? The number that you always want to look at is the net number or the net price. Or in other words, how much is the school actually going to cost for you and your family individually after you've received all of your scholarships and all of your financial aid? In terms of other important terms to know, you're going to hear merit scholarships thrown in by a lot of colleges, right? You're going to hear micro scholarships. These are typically institutional awards that are coming from those specific colleges and universities. In terms of FAFSA information, again, take your time with it. It can be a little stressful. As you noticed, even myself, trying to explain the prior was a bit confusing between the years. So it's one of those things that you want to take your time with it. You want to have all of those documents collected, and you want to just go step by step as you're completing the FAFSA. And again, that's going to see if you're eligible for things like federal aid, New York State TAP, work study, loans, things of that nature. Sure. Sure. So the question is, for the merit scholarships, what is it that's being taken into account? A weighted GPA or an unweighted GPA? And there was a second part to the question. And what is typically the average? So it's different for every college and university. Some colleges will look at specifically the weighted GPA. Some colleges, they'll see both the unweighted and the weighted, and they'll take the highest one to get the student the most possible scholarship. And then in terms of what the average is in scholarships, it depends on the school. because every school has different GPA requirements. Some schools take SATs into consideration still when determining aid as well. That's something else you're going to hear. Not every school is test optional. Some of them are, but it would be your child's job to ask, which of those colleges that they're applying to is actually test optional. I can tell you from my experience, Iona is test optional. So when determining merit scholarships, they're not looking at the SATs and ACTs, they're looking at the GPA, for example, their high school grades. And then again, with the private and outside scholarships, if you have the chance, students in the room, the seniors especially, try to apply for at least once a day. There's a private scholarship out there for everyone. There may be a scholarship simply because you're a lefty. In fact, I am a lefty, and I didn't apply for that lefty scholarship. So if you are looking for it, again, a lot of companies and places do want to give out scholarships, but it's your job to submit an application for them. The other thing is application fees. This is something else that's going to cost a little money, right? Your child is applying to 10 schools. What if every school has a $50 application fee? That adds up very quickly, right? That's $500 right there out of pocket. So my biggest piece of advice, if your child doesn't qualify for a fee waiver, I would encourage them to reach out to their admissions representative and say, hey, my name is Ray. I'm super interested in your school and I'm getting ready to submit an application. Is there any chance that I can have a fee waiver? You'd be surprised. Many colleges and universities would be thrilled to receive that email, see that your child is interested, and then say, hey, yes, here's a fee waiver. I do it on a daily with students email me asking me for a fee waiver. And then the communication part. For the students in the room, your parents are your biggest advocates. If you look next to you, they're here with you tonight, and they're here because they care and they want to be there for you. So, my biggest piece of advice is keep that line of communication open with your parents, because that's going to be extremely helpful, especially when you're getting ready to make that college choice, right? We know that there's a lot of factors that go into play with making a college choice. You're, looking for a college that has your major. You're looking for a school that, fits the criteria that you're looking for, whether it's big, small, close to home, far from home. But there's another factor that's really important, very realistic in this process, and that's the affordability as well. And that's a conversation you want to be able to have with your parents too, and say, hey, mom, dad, whoever it is that you're having that conversation with, I'm going to ask, hey, what can we realistically afford for my education? If you have that conversation with your parent, it can make that decision-making process a lot easier. And for the parents, if you feel comfortable and if you feel that that's okay in your household, I would recommend having that conversation with your child and saying, hey, realistically, we can only afford $700 a month out of pocket for college. That's going to help your child make that realistic decision. It's not going to break their hearts when May 1st comes around the corner. Like, I can't really see what I'm going to go to. But if you set that expectation early on, and if you're having that open dialogue with each other, then that avoids any confusion or just any confusion in general. And then again, it's return on investment, right? For both the child and the parent. This is a big investment. The child is going to college and getting a degree, something that they can utilize for life. It is a big investment. And when speaking to a lot of these colleges and universities, and when going on tour, you're going to ask them what that return on investment is like. What percentage of students get internships? What percentage of students are getting jobs afterwards? What are your connections like at these colleges? Or, in other words, what alumni connections are there? What connections do you have to companies? These are all great questions to ask, because at the end of the day, you're making a financial decision, you're making an investment, and you want to make sure that investment comes right back, multiplied by tenfold afterwards, right? And that is what I have for you all tonight.
Can you hear me? Yes, there we go. Thank you so much. Thank you. It's a lot of information. Of course, there were a lot of questions about the college application process. I encourage everyone to attend tomorrow. I know it's a lot to ask, 2 nights in a row, but we'll get to know each other, and I think you'll learn a lot from tomorrow's presentation. I'll be presenting. Ms. Herzog will be presenting. We'll have 2 other school counselors presenting, so you'll hear from multiple voices and it's going to be very, very informative. I appreciate your presence this evening and your attention. Please do not hesitate to reach out to me, Lavinia Freitas, or your school counselor for further information. I'm here to support you through this process, and I wish you all a good night. Thank you.